You're standing on a dock in front of a $35,000 sailboat, and the broker just told you she's ready to cross oceans. She isn't. Not at that price. Not without another $30,000 you can't see yet. Here's what I found. 6 production sailboats built to actually circle the globe still sell for the price of a used pickup truck, but only 3 of them are honest deals. The other 3 will quietly eat your retirement one invoice at a time. I know, because I climbed into all 6, opened the bilges, and read the surveys nobody bothers to post online. Stay with me. The last boat hides a secret in its hull number. Boats built in one narrow window between 1976 and 1981 carry a factory defect that scares buyers off and quietly makes the smartest deal floating. I still remember kneeling in the bilge of a Tayana 37 in a boatyard outside Annapolis, my flashlight catching a rust stain bleeding down a chainplate, while the owner swore to me it was just surface. It wasn't. It never is. So let me walk you through the 6, one at a time, the way a surveyor builds a case. Because the difference between the honest boats and the money pits isn't the price on the listing, it's what the listing leaves out. Start with the boat everybody points to first. The Westsail 32. If you've spent 5 minutes reading about blue water cruising, someone has told you the Westsail is a tank, a boat that will take anything the ocean throws at her. And that part is true. She was built starting in 1971, a heavy, full-keeled double-ender with a fiberglass hull so thick it borders on absurd. Hulls 1.25 inches thick at the keel. These boats survived storms that sank lighter yachts. The magazines in the 1970s practically worshipped her. But here's what those old magazines started and what the sellers never finished telling you. The Westsail 32 weighs around 20,000 pounds and carries a tiny sail plan for that weight. Sailors gave her a nickname decades ago. The wet snail. In light air, which is most of the air you'll ever actually sail in, she barely moves. Owners report averaging 4 knots on a good passage. Do that math on an ocean crossing. A trip that takes a modern cruiser 18 days takes the Westsail 25. That's a week more of food, a week more of water, a week more of exposure to weather on every single leg. And the money. Because she was built in the early 1970s, most Westsails you'll find now have original bronze floors and iron ballast that has been quietly rusting inside the bilge for 50 years. I've seen survey reports where the ballast had swelled and cracked the fiberglass encapsulation from the inside. That's not a weekend fix. That's a haul out, a grind out, and a rebuild that runs $8,000 to $15,000 before you've bought a single sail. So the Westsail is real. She'll cross oceans, but she'll cross them slowly, and she'll ask you to fix 50 years of hidden corrosion first. That's the honest verdict on boat number 1. Cheap to buy, expensive to trust. But slowness is an inconvenience you can plan around. What I found on the next boat is the kind of hidden cost that doesn't announce itself until the water is already coming in. Boat number 2 is the Tayana 37. Now this is where it gets interesting, because on paper, the Tayana is everything you want. Designed by Robert Perry, one of the most respected blue water designers who ever lived. More than 600 of them built in Taiwan starting in 1976. A proper full-keel cutter that has genuinely sailed around the world hundreds of times over. You can find one today for $40,000 to $60,000. The listings show you glowing teak and a cozy interior and the words World Cruiser in bold. Here's what the listings don't show you. That glowing teak deck is a countdown timer. The Tayana 37, like most of the Taiwan-built boats of that era, came with a teak deck laid over the fiberglass and screwed down with thousands of little screws. Every one of those screws is a hole drilled into your deck. For the first 20 years, the teak seals them. After 40 years, the teak is worn thin, the bungs have popped, and water is traveling down every one of those thousands of screw holes into the deck core and the plywood beneath. I inspected one where the previous owner had painted over the deck to hide it. Under my moisture meter, the whole foredeck lit up like a stove. Removing a rotted teak deck and rebuilding the core underneath is one of the most expensive jobs in all of cruising. Yards quote it between $15,000 and $40,000, depending on how far the rot has spread. $40,000 on a boat you paid $50,000 for. And then there are those chain plates I mentioned. On the Tayana, the chain plates, the metal straps that hold your mast to the hull, pass down through the deck and were often buried behind the interior joinery. Water tracks down them for decades where nobody can see. The stain I found in Annapolis was the tell. Underneath, the stainless steel had crevice corrosion so deep the metal flaked when I pressed it with a screwdriver. That chain plate was one hard sail from letting go, and a lost chain plate at sea can bring the whole rig down on your head. So who profited from that boat looking so clean in the photos? Somebody painted that deck, somebody caulked over that rust stain, and somebody was about to sell it to a buyer who trusted the pictures. That's the first time in this investigation you should feel your guard go up, because from here on the pattern repeats. The boat isn't lying to you. The people preparing it for sale are. The Tayana is a magnificent boat when it's been maintained honestly. But you have to find the honest one, and the seller has every reason to make the dishonest one look identical. Which brings me to the third boat, the one that finally breaks that pattern. Boat number 3 is the Pacific Seacraft, and specifically the Crealock 37, designed by William Crealock and built in California. And I want to be careful here, because I'm the skeptic. I don't hand out praise. But the Pacific Seacraft is the boat that made me put my moisture meter down and just nod. Here's why. Pacific Seacraft, building in the United States from the late 1970s onward, did the things the bargain builders skipped. The hull-to-deck joint is bolted on an inward flange and bedded properly, so it doesn't leak the way the cheaper joints do. The deck core in the critical areas is solid glass, not end-grain balsa waiting to rot. The chain plates are accessible and heavily built. This is a boat that was designed to be inspected, which tells you everything about the people who built her. So where's the catch? Because there's always a catch. The catch is the purchase price. A clean Crealock 37 doesn't sell for the price of a pickup truck. She sells for $80,000 to $130,000, sometimes more, because the people who own them know exactly what they have and they don't give them away. You pay for quality up front instead of paying for it in repairs later. And that is the real lesson hiding inside boat number 3. The cheap boat and the expensive boat can cost you exactly the same money by the end. One takes it at the dock in one clean check. The other takes it slowly over 5 years in haul-outs and core repairs and chain plate replacements while you're supposed to be sailing. The listing price is not the price. It never was. The listing price is the down payment on the truth. Now here's the question that should be forming in your mind. If the difference between a good deal and a disaster is what's hidden, how do you see the hidden part before you hand over the money? Because the seller won't show you, the broker works on commission, and the glossy videos will never open the panel that matters. Therefore, before I get to the last 3 boats, I need to give you the tools to see for yourself. And this next part is for a specific person. If you already bought your boat, if you're watching this in your slip right now with a knot in your stomach because I just described your deck or your chain plates, do not click away. This section is for you more than anyone, because there are 3 checks you can do this weekend with no broker, no surveyor, and less than $200 of tools that will tell you whether you're sitting on a sound boat or a slow leak into your savings. Check 1. Buy a moisture meter. A basic one costs around $150. On a dry morning, before the dew burns off doesn't count, wait until the deck is fully dry. Walk your side decks, your foredeck, and especially the area around every deck fitting and every stanchion base. Press it flat and watch the reading. A dry, healthy deck reads low and stays consistent. When you find a spot that spikes, tap it with the plastic handle of a screwdriver. A solid deck rings sharp and clean. A wet, rotten core thuds dull and dead. That dull thud is the sound of a repair bill, and now you can hear it before anyone tells you it isn't there. Check 2. Go below and find where your chain plates attach. Pull back the cushions, open the joinery, Get your flashlight right up against the metal where it disappears into the deck or the hull. You are looking for rust weeping, black staining on the surrounding wood, or a white powder. Then take a plain screwdriver and press not stab, press the metal firmly. Good stainless is hard and gives you nothing. Crevice corroded stainless will feel soft or flake or leave a rusty smear on the tip. If it does, stop sailing hard until you've had it pulled and inspected. This one check has saved people from dismastings. Check 3, and this is the one almost nobody does. Find the date stamped on your standing rigging, or, if there's no stamp, ask yourself an honest question: when was the wire last replaced? The insurance industry and every rigger I've spoken to work off the same rough interval. Standing rigging should be replaced roughly every 10 to 15 years for offshore work, sooner in the tropics where the sun and salt never rest. If you can't prove your rigging is younger than 15 years, budget for it now because it's coming. A full re-rig on a 37-foot boat runs $8,000 to $15,000, and the failure mode, if you ignore it, is the mast in the water. Do those 3 things, and you already know more about your boat than half the people who bought one this year. You've stopped trusting the photos and started reading the evidence. That's the whole game, but those checks only expose problems. The next 2 boats show you how the problems get hidden in the first place and how much someone counted on you not looking. If that idea that the real cost hides behind the listing is something you want to pursue further before you ever step onto a dock, I wrote a series of books built around exactly that kind of investigation. True Cost, Deep Water, and Deal or Drift. Each one goes deeper into the numbers, the patterns, and the questions that brokers hope you never think to ask, the kind of due diligence that turns a dreamer into a buyer who actually keeps the boat. You can find all 3 linked in the description below. Now, that brings me to the question you should be forming right now. If the difference between a good deal and a disaster is what's hidden, how do you actually see the hidden part before you hand over the money? Because that is exactly what I'm going to show you next. Boat number 4 is the Hans Christian, and the ones you'll see most are the 38 and the 43. And I understand the pull. A Hans Christian is the most beautiful boat on this list, hands down. Hand-carved teak, a raised bulwark, a bowsprit, the kind of salty good looks that stop conversation on the dock. Built in Taiwan from the mid-1970s, heavily constructed, genuinely capable offshore. People fall in love with these boats. That's the problem. You don't inspect what you're in love with. Here's the evidence the romance hides. All that gorgeous exterior teak, the cape rails, the bulwarks, the trim, the eyebrows, is not free. Every square foot of it needs to be oiled or varnished, and in the sun, it degrades constantly. Owners who keep theirs bright report spending well over 100 hours a year just on the wood. If you pay a yard to do it, exterior bright work on a Hans Christian runs several $1,000s a season, every season, forever. That's not a repair. That's a subscription. And the deeper issue is the same disease as the Tayana, sometimes worse. Many Hans Christians were built with teak decks over a cord deck, and some of the early ones have well-documented issues with water intrusion around the bulwark joints and the countless deck fittings. When water gets into that core and reaches the bulkheads, you find something ugly bulkheads that were tabbed to the hull with fiberglass, coming unglued as the plywood behind them rots. Retabbing bulkheads means tearing out that beautiful interior to get at them. I've seen quotes north of $20,000 once the joinery has to come apart. So the Hans Christian is a genuine blue water boat wrapped in the most expensive maintenance package on this list. Buy one with your eyes open and a fat wood budget, and she'll carry you anywhere. Buy one because she's pretty, and she'll carry your money away instead. That's 4 boats, and you might be noticing that every one of them, even the good ones, comes with a hidden number the listing never mentions. That is not an accident. Therefore, before the last 2, I need to name the thing that's been standing behind this whole investigation. Here's who profited from your blind spot. The boat that's been sitting for 2 years, that the owner is tired of paying dockage on, gets a $2,000 cosmetic freshen-up before it hits the market. New coat of paint on the deck to hide the soft core, a pressure wash, and some teak oil. Cushions steam cleaned. Bilge wiped down so the rust doesn't show. The broker photographs it in golden light and writes turnkey and blue water ready, and the pricing is set not by what the boat is worth, but by what a dreaming first-time buyer will pay before he learns to open the panels. I'm not telling you every seller is a crook, most aren't, but the entire machine around a used cruising boat is tuned to show you the fantasy and hide the invoice, because the fantasy sells and the invoice doesn't. Nobody in that chain gets paid to hand you a moisture meter. That's why the honest way in isn't a boat at all. It's a way of looking. And boat number 5 is where that way of looking pays off the most. Boat number 5 is the Cape Dory. And I'll point you at the Cape Dory 36 and the smaller 33. Designed by Carl Alberg, built in Massachusetts, in the United States, from the 1970s into the late 1980s. These are conservative, narrow, full-keel boats with a beautiful shear line, and they are one of the best-kept secrets in affordable offshore sailing. You can find a solid Cape Dory 33 for $30,000 to $45,000, and a 36 not far above that. Here's why they belong on the honest side of the ledger. Cape Dory used solid fiberglass hulls, no core below the waterline to get wet and delaminate. The build quality from that Massachusetts yard was genuinely good, and because these boats were sailed mostly by careful New England owners, a lot of them were maintained like heirlooms. The bronze hardware from Spartan Marine, the same company that supplied them, is still available today, which means you can actually get parts 50 years later instead of hunting a dead Taiwanese supplier. But, and I promised you every boat has a but, the Cape Dory has too. First, she's narrow and modest below, so the interior volume is small by modern standards. 2 people can cruise happily, add stuff and guests, and it gets tight fast. Second, and this is the real inspection point, the older Cape Dories are known for chainplates that were bolted to bulkheads which can rot, and for cast iron ballast keels that can weep rust at the hull-to-keel joint. Neither is a deal breaker. Both are checkable with the exact techniques I just gave you. A keel joint reseal runs $1,000 to $3,000. That's the price of admission to a boat that will genuinely outlive you. So the Cape Dory is the quiet, honest one. Not flashy, not roomy, but structurally sound and cheap to keep if you buy the right hull. She proves the thesis of this whole case. The best deal on the water is almost never the prettiest listing. It's the plain boat with the paper trail. And that leaves boat number 6. The one I told you at the very beginning hides a secret in its hull number. The one where a factory defect became the best-kept bargain in blue water sailing. Everything I've shown you so far has been about avoiding hidden costs. This last one is the opposite. This is where a hidden flaw, understood correctly, hands you a world cruising yacht for a fraction of what she's worth. The boat is the Valiant 40, designed by Robert Perry, the same designer as the Tayana, and launched in 1973. The Valiant 40 is arguably the boat that invented the modern performance cruiser. She's faster than a Westsail, tougher than most, and she has completed more circumnavigations than almost any production boat of her size. A famous one, sailed by a solo sailor, circled the globe multiple times. When sailors argue about the greatest blue water boat ever built, the Valiant 40 is always in the room. So here's the secret. And I want you to hear exactly where it comes from, because this is not dock gossip. This is documented in Robert Perry's own writing and in decades of owner records preserved by the Valiant Owners Association. The early Valiants were built by a company called Uniflight, and for a stretch of production, Uniflight laid up hulls using a fire-retardant resin. That resin had a fatal cosmetic flaw. Below the waterline, over the years, those hulls developed severe blistering, not the little osmotic pimples every old fiberglass boat gets, but deep, widespread blistering that terrified buyers and tanked resale values. Now here is the part the fear left out. Study after study, and the Owners Association's own long history, found that the blistering on these hulls was largely a cosmetic and gel coat layer problem. It looked catastrophic. It scared away every buyer who saw it. But the structural laminate underneath the actual strength of the boat remained sound. These boats kept crossing oceans. They kept circling the globe. The blisters were ugly. The hull was fine. Huh. So what does that mean for you, walking a boatyard next weekend with your eyes finally open? It means this. The Valiant 40s built in the affected window roughly, the hulls from 1976 through 1981, sell for tens of thousands of dollars less than a clean one, purely because of a defect that terrifies uninformed buyers and barely touches the boat's ability to sail around the world. A Valiant 40 that would command well over $100,000 with a clean hull can be found blistered for half that or less. And the blisters themselves? A proper peel and recoat job grinding off the old gel coat, drying the hull, and applying a modern epoxy barrier coat runs somewhere in the range of $15,000 to $25,000 on a boat that size. Do the arithmetic. Buy the blistered hull $30,000 or $40,000 under market, spend $20,000 on a barrier coat, and you own one of the finest blue water designs ever drawn, a documented, proven, globe-circling yacht for less than the price of a tired Tayana with a rotten deck. That's the honest way in. Not the prettiest boat, not the cleanest listing. The boat everyone else is afraid of for a reason that doesn't actually matter, that you understand and they don't. To find it, you do one thing the dreamers never do. You check the hull identification number and the build year, you confirm you're looking at a Uniflight era hull in that window, and you get the blistering surveyed for what it really is, cosmetic gel coat failure, instead of running from the word blister like everyone before you. The defect that scares the herd is the discount that funds your dream. That is the whole case. 6 boats. 3 that quietly drain you, the Westsail with 50 years of ballast corrosion, the beautiful Tayana with a countdown deck, the gorgeous Hans Christian with its endless wood subscription. 3 that reward you, the built-right Pacific Seacraft you pay for up front, the quiet, honest Cape Dory with a paper trail, and the misunderstood Valiant 40 whose famous flaw is the best bargain on the water. The line between them was never the price. It was always what the listing hid and whether you knew how to look. Here's what I need you to feel walking away from this. The sailing dream doesn't die from a storm at sea. It dies at a dock, quietly, in the 6 months after you sign, when the invoices you never saw coming start arriving faster than the sunsets you were promised. You just saw those invoices before they had your name on them. That's the difference between the buyer who cruises and the buyer who sells at a loss and swears off boats forever. You're the kind of person who wanted the evidence before you trusted the salesman. That's not cynicism. That's the exact instinct that keeps your nest egg afloat instead of drilling holes in your retirement. Never apologize for opening the panel before you open your wallet. Now I want to hear from you. Of these 6, which one were you already dreaming about before you clicked the Westsail, the Tayana, the Pacific Seacraft, the Cape Dory, the Hans Christian, or the Valiant? And be honest with me, had you ever heard that the blistered Valiants were the smart buy? Or did the word blister scare you off like everyone else? Tell me in the comments. I read them, and I answer, because the details you share become the next investigation. If you'd rather investigate before you buy than pray after you sign, subscribe and stand with the buyers who refuse to be sold a fantasy. Next time, I'm opening up the one repair that quietly ends more cruising dreams than rot, rig, and blisters combine, the diesel repower and the exact hour meter reading where a run's great engine becomes a $15,000 anchor. You won't want to shop for a boat until you've seen it. This video walked you past all 6 boats. Inside the honest harbor, I pick up right where we stopped, giving you my full surveyor's verdict, hull by hull. And you can ask me your own question. A real person, me, answering you myself, not a machine. You're not doing this alone. Thousands of first-time buyers are already inside. Just point your phone's camera at the code on screen. Cancel anytime with one click. Now, before you spend a single dollar on repairs, let me show you how to walk into a boatyard without watching your savings disappear. That video is right here, starting now. Stay with me.